With loads and loads of scientific information generated annually, scientists from across the world are now questioning how science and technology can inform the management of disaster risks, even as nations contend with escalating losses of lives and livelihoods from disasters each year. In a meeting organized by the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction (UNISDR) in Geneva, Switzerland, the main preoccupation was the creation of a roadmap detailing how science and technology will support the implementation of the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, the second global agreement that aims to reduce fatalities and economic losses from natural and man-made hazards.
Scientists are really important on almost every aspect of responding and preparing and preventing disasters and reducing the risk of disasters. Maybe I could give you a couple of examples. One, for example, in some countries that experience tsunamis, the giant waves that are so destructive, the satellite sensing can detect waves, and buoys, science buoys that are left in the ocean to measure the waves are an important part of the early warning system to help communities evacuate from the beaches. Similarly, scientists who are developing crops that are resistant to drought or flood are another example of how a scientific input can reduce the risk of a disaster.
With the Sendai framework, there is an understanding, an agreement that instead of managing or responding to disasters, we should actually turn a fair degree of effort and investment, both from the scientific point of view but also policy, towards managing risk or disaster risk.
For most African communities, science would provide much-needed comprehensive solutions to recurrent problems of drought and floods. According to the World Food Programme, approximately 14 million people in Southern Africa are currently facing hunger owing to the El Niño weather pattern. The El Niño phenomenon has also had adverse effects on food production in Ethiopia, where 10 million other people are in need of food aid. Examples exist across the continent of how science-led interventions can cushion communities from the effects of such hazards.
In Senegal, we are working on shortening the variety cycles, to prevent the drought event. Knowing from 10 to 20 years of frequency analysis of the rainfall, you can have an idea of when practically we can expect rainfall to start and how long that rainfall would last. So you set up an experiment, you create adapted varieties that can be used to overcome this drought issue.
There are some novel solutions in different areas and different ecologies, and I can think of very quickly for example, the Great Green Wall, which came up almost 20 years after the recognition of the advancement of desertification from the Sahel down to sub-Saharan Africa. So if you've heard about the Great Green Wall, I think that's a good solution. Now, what makes it novel for me is that it was not even just about greening in terms of planting trees, but adapting trees that are also productive in different countries and different ecologies. So for example, forage trees for northern parts of Burkina Faso and Mali that would also provide forage for the livestock there, camels and different livestock. So I think that is
There's a huge amount of science that is taking place in Africa that is directly related to disasters and disaster risk reduction. And it has been for decades, in fact. Some of the best global research on food insecurity has come from Africa over the past 30 or 40 years. The work that has been done in science, that has informed policy, has not fully been recognized as related to disaster risk reduction, but there is a vast amount, and it covers quite a remit around protecting livestock health in times of drought through the appropriate vaccinations of livestock, all the way to the protection of human health during cholera outbreaks.
While developments in agronomy and genetics are a big step towards enhancing food security across the continent, scientists urge that governments need to invest in better forecasting tools so as to obtain accurate weather data for better planning.
Climate information for farmers is important to forecast on the onset of rainfall, distribution of the rainfall over the season, and also when the rainy season is going to end. Those in the flood-prone areas would like to get information on the temporal and spatial distribution of temperature as well as precipitation, and also the intensity of the precipitation. If it's going to be stormy, what will be the frequency?
The UNISDR Science and Technology Conference provided an opportunity for scientists and policymakers to suggest new ways of knowledge production and collaboration to ensure that great scientific knowledge is turned to protection of communities and property from the risks of natural and man-made hazards.
The national hero in Cuba, José Martí, wrote in the 19th century that to translate science in everybody's language, that is a good, not all people does. Science need to be translated into everybody's language, and that only could be done by scientists, because scientists know the science and also have to learn or to be taught to how to translate this into plain words to the civil defense, to decision makers, to the government, because they also are not scientists.